The presenting sponsor of Andrew Talks to Chefs is Mies. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system that makes your professional kitchen life easier with unprecedented tools for recording, scaling, analyzing, costing, and teaching recipes. Much of it at the press of a virtual button. Learn more at getmeez.com/Andrew. That's GETMeez.com/Andrew. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs is supported in part by S.Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, S.Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I'm Massimo Bottura.
This is Amanda Cohen.
This is David Kinch.
This is Mike Anthony.
This is Hooney Kim.
This is Amanda Freitag.
This is Richard Blaze.
This is Paul Kahn.
This is Curtis Stone.
This is Stephen Harris.
This is Missy Robbins.
And you're listening to Andrew Talks to Chefs.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. This is Andrew Talks to Chefs. I am your host, Andrew Friedman. I hope all of you out there are doing well. Our guest today is Chef Caroline Glover. Caroline has the restaurants Annette and Traveling Mercies Oysters and Cocktails. Those are both in Aurora, Colorado. I'll say a bit more about all of that in just a moment. I do also want to mention at the top of the show that Caroline and her husband and business partner, Nelson, who is a writer by trade, have launched, or about to launch, I should say, a new zine called Mother Sauce. And I do link to where you can get yourself on the mailing list for that zine. Check out their first issue, and I recommend that you do that. It's discussed in this conversation, and I think it sounds terribly exciting, and I always want to support anybody, not just chefs, who are kind of taking a chance, putting themselves out there in a creative way, and that's definitely what Caroline and Nelson are doing with Mother Sauce, their new zine. So please do go check out that link on the episode description page for today's show. Before saying just a little bit more about Caroline, I do want to say, since I promised I would, that I had a wonderful dinner at Next Restaurant in Chicago last week. Again, I went in for the Wall Street 1987 menu, having written a book called Chefs, Drugs, and Rock and Roll about the American chefs and restaurant scene in the 70s and 80s. There was a lot of overlap between the content and the narration of that dinner by the team and stuff that I wrote about in that book. My wife, Caitlin, brought me in for my birthday. We went to Chicago overnight just to do that. We also, thankfully, were able to make a visit to the newly opened Obama Presidential Center, which was also pretty amazing. But I'm going to do a whole post about my dinner at Next. It'll be on my personal feed on Instagram. That is Toqueland Andrew, Toqueland Andrew. That'll be up either today, Thursday, July 2nd, or tomorrow, Friday, July 3rd. But that's where you can see some more extensive commentary from me on that dinner, because I had a few things I'd love to share about it. I had a great time. I'm a total geek for that stuff, and it was just awesome. Anyway, our guest today, as I say, is Caroline Glover. Caroline is a native of Texas, who I think probably safe to say is the only guest we've had on this show who had her culinary epiphany in Yosemite National Park, a place that she and I have some common history with. We'll get into that. She went to the Culinary Institute of America, trained in New York City, and then she and Nelson found their way to Colorado, where, as I say, she has Annette and Traveling Mercies restaurants there in Aurora. I don't think I need to say anything else about this conversation. Oh, I do want to forecast our next episode, which will drop next week, the second week of July, is with Andrew Zimmern. Andrew and I recorded that yesterday. It's very far-ranging, so I hope you will make a point of checking that out. And the easiest way to do that is to like and subscribe if you're watching us now on YouTube, or to subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and then our new stuff will show up in your feed. So again, Andrew Zimmer next week. Maybe that's a reason for you to finally get around to subscribing to what we do here. And with that, I'm going to get right to it. Here is my conversation with Caroline Glover. Here you go.
It's gonna take a prolonged arrangement of the senses to make some sense of this.
Caroline, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad we're finally getting to do this.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I just saw you 2 weeks ago in New York City for the City Meals event. Thank you again for helping out with that
Yeah,
and
that's a
traveling
blast.
in. Before we start talking about your story, why don't you just quickly, for people who aren't familiar, tell them about your two restaurants there?
I have two restaurants in Aurora, Colorado, which is just outside of Denver. They're both located in the Stanley Marketplace. Annette has been around for 9.5 years. Wood-fired, small share plates. And then we have a 300 square foot oyster bar on the third floor called Traveling Mercies. So it's a cocktail oyster bar.
And where's that title come from?
Traveling Mercies, it's something my mom used to always say to us. She still does. If we, instead of like safe travels, or she always would say Traveling Mercies. And my husband Nelson picked up on that, when she started saying, he's like, I've never heard that before. And I was like, oh yeah, I just thought that's what people said.
Oh, wow. I had never heard it.
Yeah, it's just a safe travel. It's a mercy, a prayer. And I think it embodies a lot of things about hospitality.
Well, I haven't been there yet. I've been to Annette a few times and had some wonderful meals there. Let's get right into your story since, I mean, you were on the show once during COVID. Those shows kind of exist for me in their own bubble. They're not numbered like the other
Yeah.
shows. They were like 30-minute, timely conversations. So effectively, this is your first bona fide, real appearance on the show. Am I correct? You are originally from Texas?
Yes, I'm from College Station, Texas.
Okay, which is where relative to like the next biggest city I would know.
Houston, so it's about 2 hours from Houston and about an hour and a half from Austin.
Okay,
So south of Houston.
got it.
We always fly into Houston because there's no airport in College Station. Now we fly into Austin. It's a small town, but it's a college town. So it's
Mhm.
big, but full of students at certain times of the year.
For you growing up, if you could just give a quick sketch, kind of like what your family dynamic was like and how food did or did not fit into that.
I had a very traditional upbringing. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked outside the house. I have two other siblings, so my mom was really in charge of raising three of us while my dad worked. And cooking was one of the biggest parts of her job. She cooked every single meal. I would have fried okra after school for snack that my mom had fried up. Like she took that really seriously. And when I was younger, I actually hated it because I was like, I want to go to restaurant. I want fast food. I want all this stuff. And as I got older, I realized like how special that was, that we got to eat meals around the table with all five of us. And we weren't ever allowed to say that we didn't like something. You had to try it and you go to bed hungry if you didn't like it. I don't think I was really into food, or I didn't know I was into food until I left the house and missed that cooking and missed that just at 5 o'clock every day, my mom was in the kitchen, that you wouldn't find her anywhere else. And, she was learning how to cook too with us. Like she knew how to do like simple things, but then as she continued to cook for us, and food magazines were really getting big, like in the late 80s, early 90s, Cooking Light was her go-to. She
Mhm.
was trying things that other people weren't necessarily trying in our small town in Texas. And that could just be cooking like a whole fillet of salmon over cedar on the grill. It's not, you wouldn't go to somebody else's house and try that. So
Right.
she was like very experimental and really grew as a cook with us as children.
Is this right? Your first job was at a Chili's?
Yes, I was a to-go girl. So I wasn't in the kitchen. I had like the little space outside. I fucked up every order under the sun. I was the worst. I was 16. I should not have been given that job, but I really loved like the atmosphere of the restaurant. You know, it was a college town. I was so enamored with like servers and the kitchen dynamic and seeing people come in and out. Like there was just being in a small town. We only had one high school at the time in our hometown. So you just kind of did the same thing. And I felt like when I worked at Chili's, I got to enter this whole new world of like grown-ups. I loved it. I was obsessed with it.
Now, I have to ask, I usually don't put much stock in Wikipedia, but I do look there often before I do interviews.
Oh
They
no.
say you took that job at 15.
Maybe
So
I was 15. Yes, I turned 16 there. So I'm a summer
okay.
baby. So I was 15 when I got hired, probably in May when school got out. And then I turned 16 July.
Got it.
That's while I was there.
Well, I was only asking because, very often on the show, people kind of fudge their age to get their first job. So I was going to ask if that was why, if you've just conditioned yourself to saying 16, but it sounds like you filled out an
No,
honest application.
I was being dropped off by my parents at the beginning, and then I had my Toyota 626 by the end of the summer.
I had that. I had a Ford Thunderbird that I got in the middle of one of my first jobs. I went from the mom drop off pickup to driving myself.
Well, I know when
Um,
they hired me, they said, "We've never done this before, but you interviewed so well." And then they totally regretted it. I was a total shithead. So,
wow. So tell me, before you settle on, what you ended up doing, was there something else you thought you were going to do?
yeah, I mean, I was a CNA in high school, which is a certified nursing assistant. I would work in
Hmm.
a nursing home my senior year, junior and senior year to going to school. I thought I wanted to be in the medical field in some capacity, whether it be physical therapy or I just didn't know what I wanted, but I don't know why I was really into the medical field. And then I was into nutrition, and then that kind of evolved into cooking, kind of because you started thinking about food in a big way.
Sorry, with the medical field, how far along did you?
You know, I became a CNA. I would shadow in the summers with physical therapists. I went to college for 2 years before I left traditional college for culinary school. I
Hmm.
was a nutrition major, had no idea how much chemistry that was going to involve and math. And, in high school, I had an eating disorder. I had anorexia.
Hmm.
And so I became like very obsessed with food, but in not the cooking way, just like understanding it. So that all kind of like led me to cooking, which is bizarre. Like if you had asked my mom 20 years ago, who will be a chef out of your kids, I would have been the least likely because I just struggled with food. But getting into kitchens healed me.
Is it too personal for me to ask you a question about
Oh, no,
that?
no.
Okay. I think I'm sure you are the first guest I've ever had on the show who has, I'm sure you're not the first guest who struggled with anorexia, but you're the first guest who's
Yeah.
ever mentioned it. I don't want to pry too much, but I am curious, you talk, and I know they're not the same thing, but I know people who are in AA who make a point, even if they're a chef owner, of leaving their restaurants like before. I mean, it's not as much of a thing as it used to be, but they would always leave before the shift drink happened. You know,
Uh-huh. Interesting.
always. They
Yeah.
would sneak out. I saw it. I mean, and they told me. I mean, is it an ongoing challenge when you've dealt with that in your life to be in a profession that is, where that's kind of your stock and trade, or is it something that one kind of can get past in a way that you don't tend to with something like alcoholism or something like that?
Yeah, I think, obviously it changes from person to person, but for
Sure.
me personally, it's probably why I got into cooking was that I got to be creative and make these things and then feed them to, give them to people to eat. So I loved cooking at my house, but I didn't want to eat it or I didn't want to eat all of it. So I invite people over to feed them. And I think it started that way. But as I've just grown and gotten more confident in who I am and what's important to me, and feeling my body in a kitchen without the right nutrition versus feeling it with the right nutrition, I wasn't going to be good at my job if I couldn't get over this. And so for me, I think my love for kitchens just overrode, like I just had to choose one or the other. Eventually, I could get away with being really unhealthy and working long hours and not eating much, but I couldn't sustain that.
Hmm.
So I think for me, it really just kind of morphed. And I don't know what it would be like if I weren't in kitchens, if I didn't have a job that was so physically demanding that my body has to be in good condition to feel, well enough.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, and thanks for
Yeah,
discussing it for a minute. I appreciate that. So you
of
went
course.
for 2 years to as you said, a traditional school. That was in Texas.
It was, yep, in Fort
Yep.
Worth, Texas.
What was your lightning bolt moment? Like, to move off of that path, and then your next, unless there's something I missed somewhere, I believe your next academic stop, so to speak, was the Culinary Institute of America. That's a huge leap. I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
leap geographically. That's a huge leap in subject matter. That's a huge leap pretty much every way from home. What was the moment, as much as you're able to pinpoint it?
Growing up in a pretty conservative town where everybody went to high school and then you go to college, like there was no in between. I applied to one college. I got into it. It was 3.5 hours from my home. So I was like, okay, well, this is good. I won't come home every weekend, but I don't want to be super far away. And it was a small, it's Texas Christian University. So very like sorority, kind of like an elitist type place. And I remember being there and being like, this is not me. I'm not happy, but I just thought it's what you do. And so I cried every day. I was just like, I don't want to do this. And after the first year, I kind of settled in a little bit. And then after the second year, I was like, I don't want to do this. So to my dad's credit, he drove to Fort Worth. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm so unhappy. So he came and we spent the whole entire weekend just talking.
That's great.
And yeah, like what makes you happy? What do you want to do? And I was working at Central Market, which is a grocery store in Fort Worth, and I was the like salad scooper for the chicken salad and all that kind of stuff. And I loved the people I worked with. I got along with them way more than my roommates and sorority sisters. And that's also when Food Network was really big. I was watching Rachel Ray and Emerald, and I spent a solid 48 hours with my dad, and he said, well, you know what? Why don't you go to culinary school? I hadn't even thought about that. And we looked it up, and he was like, all right, there's a Culinary Institute of America. I feel great about that. Maybe you get your bachelor's, maybe you don't. And he was a very strict father growing up. And to have that moment with him where he really listened and said, I don't want you to be unhappy, but I also don't want you to drop out of school. This is where we're going to meet in the middle. That was like one of the most pivotal moments of my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What a good dad.
A really, really good dad. A
Yeah.
really good dad.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm so thankful that I do what I do and I've managed to do it successfully because in their own ways, both of my kids have some tendencies toward, let's broadly say the arts,
Yep.
or my son wants to maybe do like sports production, sports media, and I'm like all for it. But, my mom, I tell this story sometimes. When I went to college in New York, I wanted to be a writer, and my mother would periodically arrange dinner with me, her, and an actor friend of hers so he could talk me out of being a writer. That was the purpose of the dinner.
I find myself with our 3.5-year-old, like whispering to her, like, don't you do this. But at the same time, I'm like, I got to do what I wanted to do. And I don't know where I would be if I hadn't kind of gotten the push to go, to find something that makes you happy. This doesn't have to be your story. That I went to school for 4 years and I was miserable. So of course, if Franny chose this industry, I'd be fine with it. But there are moments that I'm like, please don't.
Right. Yeah, no, understandable. How much time had you spent outside of Texas before you springboard to Hyde Park, New York?
Not much. So what I ended up doing was, so before you go to the Culinary Institute of America, you have to work in a kitchen for 6 months. So I moved home to work in like our one fancy restaurant at my hometown. We ended up going on a backpacking trip to Yosemite National Park, and it was the most free I had felt in a very long time. I was so happy being outdoors. And we got back home, and I have a temper, and I was kept flaring up. And I was like, I'm not happy. And my therapist, I talked to her, and she said, you got to get out of this town. I'm like, I know, I'm working towards that. And she's like, no, you got to get out now. And so I again had another late night conversation with my dad. And he said, you were so happy in Yosemite. Do you think you could find a kitchen job there? And so we looked up the Ahwahnee, and I applied, and I got accepted, and I moved 2 weeks later to California, did 6 months there. There were two guys from Culinary Institute of America. They were headed back after their externship, and I hopped in the car with them and went to Hyde Park.
You didn't work under Percy Watley, did you?
I did.
Oh my God, he's an old friend of mine.
Oh, he's the reason, he is one of the reasons that I am where I am today.
Oh my gosh.
He
So
was,
Percy, go
oh,
ahead.
no,
Let's
go ahead.
well, let's
Yeah.
give Percy his flowers for a minute because I met Percy. I wrote a book about the Bocuse d'Or competition years
Oh,
ago,
yeah.
and he was one of the people who tried out. Um, he got into it because the
Roland.
coach for the team was Roland Hennon, who was, I
Yeah.
guess, the corporate chef or something for Delaware
Yeah.
North, which owned the Ahwahnee. So I interviewed all the people who were trying out for the team. And I've actually met Percy and Roland at the same dinner in the hotel we were all staying in Orlando where the tryouts were. And then
Roland
Percy and
is
I
a
stayed.
character.
Well, Roland is most famous for being Thomas Keller's mentor,
Uh-huh.
um, the man who kind of activated Thomas as a serious chef
Yeah.
when he worked for him all the way back in the 70s. He's a real old school French chef in
I can
America.
still hear him saying Caroline. He's
The
walking
word,
through.
the phrase I always remember because it sounded so funny from him was the way he said mind-boggling, which he said with some frequency. I won't do my French accent, but it was he just I don't it wasn't meant to be funny, but I found it so charming. In any
Yep.
event, Percy got me involved. I for several years moderated the Chef's Holiday event in January.
Oh, that's so
You
cool.
might have been there when I was there.
I could have been. Percy was the most kind and gentle person in the kitchen and took me under his wing. And he was like that with everybody. I hadn't been in enough kitchens to know how rare it was until I went to other kitchens. But he actually is now a chef for, I don't know if he's still with DNC, but now he does some of the resorts out in the mountains here. And he
Oh,
came to Annette one day and it was oh, it was so special.
oh, so he's in Colorado now.
Yeah, and I don't know if he just
Okay.
travels back and forth from, but he does help manage some kitchens for I think maybe up in Evergreen or some, I'm not totally sure.
All right. Well, Percy, if you're out there, we both love you. Can you just talk for a minute about your Yosemite time? Because I went there I think for 5 Januaries in a row. Used to do a thing called Chef's Holidays, which was a week of guest chefs doing demos, and
Yep.
then it kind of concluded with a big dinner in their beautiful cathedral of a dining room. I mean, just stunning. It's in the middle of Yosemite Park. Um, I don't know where they put you all up, but like there's a little cluster of residences where the Percys of the world, like a lot of people who
Yeah.
work full
Did
time in
not
the
put us
park.
up there.
No,
Those are
but
for
it's
the
like,
yeah,
but it's like its own little mini. It's like something you'd see in a
the
movie. It's
village.
like a community. They have their own school.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
it's like it's a TV series waiting to happen. You know.
Oh, it would be spicy for sure.
But what was it like to be just to live there?
It was the best time of my life.
Hmm.
So they put us up in, we called them wobs without baths, cabins without baths. And there's a community bathroom. And then you lived in these little tiny cabins. And I think we paid $10 a month or a week. And it came out of our paycheck. You had one roommate. People were always coming and going. And then there were lifers that were there all the time. And it was a very transient, but it's almost kind of like being in kitchens where you're just working with people from all different walks of life. I mean, like all different walks of life, like people who are starting over at 60, people like me who were 19 or 20 and trying to find themselves. It was just a very beautiful time. And I think like there was no judgment and there was just, we're there to hang out and be outside. And then we do this side gig that you have to do. But I also loved being in the kitchen and learning. So I kind of just felt like it was all perfect. And I probably would have stayed longer than I should have. But I feel very lucky that I had been accepted to culinary school. That was the deal, that was the plan. And I'm sure I called my parents at some point and was like, I'm just going to stay a little bit longer. And they're like, absolutely not. If you want us to pay for this, you go to that.
Mm-hmm.
And meeting the guys from the externship who are they, wax poetically about culinary school. They're like, it's so cool. So I think a lot of things had to line up to get me out of there and in there. It's kind of a perfect transition, but a very, very special place.
Yosemite, if you haven't if you're out there listening, if you can go there sometime, it is just nonstop beautiful. There's all kinds of little pockets of it you can explore. The Ahwahnee Hotel is absolutely stunning. Was also the reference point for the design of the Overlook Hotel in the movie The Shining.
Are you
Did they ever?
serious?
They never told you that?
Maybe,
Next time
maybe.
if you ever see The Shining, the lobby,
Yeah. Okay.
it was modeled on the Ahwahnee. I don't know why. I have
That's
no
so
idea.
funny. I mean, it's
But
gorgeous. It's one of
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
incredible.
But it's very similar looking. In fact, when I was there once, I steamed up my bathroom mirror and I wrote the word red rum and I posted it to Instagram.
Hey everybody, Andrew here. I want to encourage you to check out our presenting sponsor, Mies. Not because they're our sponsor, but because Mies exists to make your kitchen life easier. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system for culinary professionals. What that means is that Mies is a virtual place to house all of your recipes, and just as importantly, it enables you to derive all kinds of information from them: food costs, allergen data, yield loss, unit conversions, and nutritional breakdowns, and also to scale them up or down and even to cost them, and to do most of that at the press of a virtual button. Mies is also a teaching tool that empowers you to incorporate how-to photos and videos to illustrate individual recipe steps and techniques, which is especially useful and time-saving for multi-unit organizations. The basic version of Mies is free for the entire culinary industry. Upgrade to premium and let Mies make your entire business more efficient and centralized. Train and onboard team members, manage production, and even process invoices. Seriously, if you work with recipes in the pro kitchen or bar, Mies was built for you and will make your entire restaurant's or company's kitchen life easier. And as a listener of Andrew Talks to Chefs, receive 25 free recipe uploads and breakdowns on your new Mies account by signing up today. Learn more at getmeez, that's GetMeez.com/Andrew. Simply click through via the link on the episode description for today's show.
Okay, you go to the Culinary Institute. Now, first of all, I have to say this now, full disclosure, I am an adjunct there.
Yeah.
So I have to say that. Please don't be influenced by that. In hindsight, I always ask people, cooking school, glad you did it?
I mean, I'm kind of two minds. It got me to New York, which got me to New York City. I don't think I would have moved to New York City had I not been a 2-hour-and-a-half train ride away. It would have felt like too big of a jump. I did not personally have to pay for schooling. My parents graciously did that. So I don't know if I would have taken on that debt. But I do attribute it to getting me out of Texas and California, and then really placing me in the best city in the world for food.
You believe that?
I do.
Interesting.
I'm obsessed with New York City.
Wow. It's so funny. I hear people who were here in the 80s talk about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that energy is somewhere else now. I don't know where. I mean, there's so much here.
It's me coming from Denver, so it's like
I understand.
Like people sitting in dining rooms at 11 p.m. I'm just like,
yes,
yeah, like this is great.
Yeah. Although that's almost over now, sadly.
Yeah.
COVID kind of took that out largely. How did you take to the culture of the culinary? And I don't even just mean the Culinary Institute. This is most cooking schools. The neckerchief, the toque. The jacket, the checkered pants. Like, did you take? It's weird because I'm sitting here talking to you, and I'm like, part of me can imagine you doing that, and part of me can imagine that being just complete anathema to you.
Yeah, you know what? I think I learned very quickly that I was good in the kitchen when I was there. Like I had, chefs be like, "Whoa, like you like doing this," and I'm like, "I love this," and so it kind of felt like, I didn't follow many rules, and it was kind of fun. I was like, if I follow the rules and I do what I'm supposed to, I get, praise. And I didn't do great in school. I did fine. But this was another level for me, and I liked it. Like For me, I was wild, I was out partying, but like when it was time to go to school, I had to put on the uniform. And I knew once I was in that uniform that I was, it was like a job for me. I loved working. So it felt like a job. So I liked it.
I love that.
I haven't
I
worn a
love that.
toque since, but
I mean, yeah, it's funny. Some people are just all over that. And then some people I know, it's like I say, it's just so, but it's funny. I could have seen your answer going either way. Um,
totally.
so you end up coming to the city, and you go to work for April Bloomfield at the
Hmm.
Spotted Pig. And I know you and April are still friendly. I came to a collaboration dinner you did at your restaurant there in
Yeah.
Denver. I should say my son just graduated from CU Boulder, so that's why I've been to your restaurant a few times.
Yeah.
I've been out there more than I probably normally would get out to Denver and Boulder. But how did that job come to you through the school? Did that come to you through, some kind of more traditional application job listing process?
Yeah, so this is where Percy comes in again. I was getting close to graduation, and when I left, he was like, "You can always come back. Like, I would absolutely love to have you back." So I was a few months out, and I was like, "All right, Percy, I want to come back. What do you have available?" And he said, "No, you're not coming back. You're in New York. You need to stay out there." And I was devastated. He said, "If you really, really want to come back, absolutely. I would be a fool to not say yes, but you will not grow here. You will not grow in the way you need to." And he said, "Have you ever heard of April Bloomfield?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, she's coming out to do the banquet."
Holiday.
Yeah,
Oh,
the holiday. And he said, "Why don't I'm going to email her and get you a stage." And so I was like, "Okay, that's fine." So I rode the train into the city. I mean, it blew my mind. I had never been in a kitchen like that. I'd never seen an operation like that. I remember I rode the train back home and just fell asleep immediately on it. Like it was so overstimulating. And I remember the sous chef at the time, Josh, he said, "I don't hire kids from the Culinary Institute of America." He said, "You clearly know somebody here. So that's why you got a stage. I would not have called you or emailed you." And he's like, "I think you guys come out of that school thinking you know everything. And if you're going to work here, you know nothing." And I said, "Great, I don't know anything." And so I got the job and I was scared shitless to start. I went home for a couple of weeks to kind of gather everything. And I like tried to not leave my bed. I was like, "I'm not going. I don't want to live in New York City." It was so overwhelming to me, but it was the most pivotal moment of my career kitchen wise. I'd never worked in a place where I loved the food the way I love the food there. It's a whole different ballgame when you're working and putting out food that you genuinely care about. And I was learning so much. And I'd never worked for chefs that went to farmers markets and had foragers. And there are parts of it that were like detrimental to my career because I thought every kitchen had a prep crew that cleaned every single shallot as it entered. Like there were luxuries there, but it was the hardest place I've ever worked and one of the best.
what were the takeaways from that restaurant for you, from that kitchen?
There were a few takeaways. Working at that capacity and that many hours and that late, I definitely learned how restaurants create that family talk, but also it not being really healthy. Because it's like you have the hardest day of your life, you work 16 hours, but it's like here is a half bottle of wine and hang out and then it all just kind of washes away. And then you like wake up the next morning, you're like, "Oh shit." But it also taught me how every single ingredient is just as important as the next. Her sourcing was something I'd never seen before. She took pride and even when I cooked with her here, my staff was like, "She doesn't, I'm like, "Yeah, she only wants perfect." So that was amazing, but it also pushed me to want to work on farms because there were summers that we didn't serve tomatoes, and these tomato farmers that depended on our business, it wasn't the best year. So she was like, "You know what? I'm not using tomatoes. It's not the best year." So then I became really obsessed with like, well, then what do farmers do? Where do those tomatoes go? Like how how do you not serve the best of everything, and where do the shit bits go? Or so it also pushed me to see the other side, just because it was such an intense kitchen. We really didn't get to do a ton of prep. We didn't get to see the raw ingredients. So that made me think, I haven't seen all of it. I want to see the other side of this. And that pushed me out to farms.
A quick note of thanks to one of our promotional partners, S.Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, S.Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurture the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I should say, I don't even know when it was, maybe around '05. But when that restaurant was taking off,
Yeah.
I wrote a profile of April for the Oprah magazine.
Oh my gosh. So
And
fun.
she had me meet her at the Union Square Farmers Market to walk around. She wanted me to see her shop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a particular shop, like
Oh,
it's funny.
yeah.
I tell her these stories now, of like her hands. I like, there's certain little things that I do that she did. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Did I ruin you? Like, is that a tick that I have? And I'm like, these are all beautiful ticks. Like, I love that. I love that I think she's hands down one of the most talented chefs. So everything that happened was horrific, but what I took away from it was really blending flavors together and working with ingredients that make sense and that are grown with integrity. And, you can't learn that. It's hard to learn that.
When you say everything that happened was horrific, I mean, younger people may not know. There was some scandalous, to put it mildly, stuff that came out of
Yeah.
that restaurant.
Yeah.
April was not an offender.
Correct.
You don't have to comment on this, but in my opinion, I think she's been done wrong by a lot of people. I think of so many people who were in close proximity to what went on to things like what went on in that restaurant, in other restaurants, and they've all walked away unscathed. I don't know how she became like the sacrificial lamb for the industry, but I think it's time people stop mentioning it every time they write about her. I think it's enough, personally.
I do too. I
Okay.
totally
Well, go ahead and say I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I've
Yeah,
been
no,
looking for an
mean,
opportunity to say this because I think there's so many. Listen, I'm not going to name names. You can look at Bobo and all the people who came out of there who were really famous, and still have their restaurants, and
yeah.
and all the people who were on The View with him, and like nobody else. There's no other collateral damage, and
Yep.
yeah, the press release they put out wasn't the greatest, but I mean, okay, nobody's perfect.
I mean,
And
I
she
think
was also this April. People may not know this, but you don't see her do a lot of television. April's a very timid person. I don't know what she's like
fiercely
in the
private.
kitchen, but
Fiercely private.
she was a fairly newly arrived Brit. I mean, like, how did she become the punching bag for this whole narrative? I've never understood it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad this came up. I'm glad I wouldn't have said it if you hadn't said horrific things
Yeah.
went on there. But
Yeah.
I think people need to like let it go.
Yeah. I 100% agree. She was brought there by this team. She had no ownership originally in the Spotted Pig. She was an employee and she wasn't a citizen, and she was being paraded around, as this amazing chef. And I think she also is a fiercely private person and didn't want to talk to every single reporter, and a story got written, that lobbed her in with the whole entire, scandals that went down. But she really had nothing, she was ours. She was the kitchen, and she had to be careful because she could not lose that job. It was a job.
You mean
And
because of immigration and whatnot?
yeah,
Yeah.
I would assume that. And
Yeah, I've always wondered about that piece, but I had no idea.
yeah, and the fact that she didn't have any ownership. I mean, she was an employee. And I think she does regret not standing up more, but if you have to look at the whole situation, and not everything came to her, and then she got lumped with this person when everything hit headlines. And
Yeah.
I think she got treated. I think many people in the industry turned their back on her like that, just in an instance. And that's hurtful. And yeah, it was a really crazy mob mentality, of just
Yeah.
like, yeah, we're done with this.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say this and then we'll move on. But again, I mean, I'll be honest. I know people who are like, well, she was a woman, that makes it worse. And I'm like, you have to understand.
Yeah.
And I started to be around the industry in the 90s, and a lot of people on the periphery like me didn't know a lot of this. I didn't know any of these things. I mean, I felt so naive when it all came out. But you have to understand, nobody was blowing the whistle. Nobody anywhere. Like,
Nope.
these stories that came out about 2017, 2018,
Yep.
though there were other stories that were the same story that could have, now we know, could have come out anytime in the prior 20, 30 years in the US,
Yep. Yeah.
and they didn't. So this is, again, I don't know how it all landed on this one little lady's shoulders. It's like so
I feel like she was
crazy to
like the
me.
sacrificial,
Lamb. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
Yeah, it's
horrific.
crazy. Anyway, thank you for letting me air that. I've been looking for a
Yeah.
moment to bring it up. I should
Yeah.
also say I live walking distance from Sailor, which is one of my absolute
Oh,
favorite restaurants.
lucky.
I
Yeah.
know. I just went in last Monday as a walk-in. It's so great. Okay, let's get back to you. So, how do you get from New York to Colorado?
So a boy, imagine that. So Nelson went to NYU. Um, we and then our forager, her name's Annie, and she now has a business out there as well. They went to school together, and he would come to the restaurant sometimes. And then they ended up working at Eckerton Hill Farm for Tim Stark. It was like of the era of like the overeducated farmer, and like not knowing what to do after college. And I was about 2 years in the Spotted Pig, and Nate Smith, who was the chef de cuisine or the head chef at the time, left, and I loved Nate, and I didn't want to be the Spotted Pig without him. And so it kind of gave me this moment of like, what's next? Like, what do I want to do? And I went and visited my friend Annie on the farm, and Nelson was there. I fell in love with it. It was so magical. And we ended up, I guess, dating on the farm. We'd go into the city together and have dates and then be out at the farm. And when that season was up, it was time to make a decision. And we were dating, and I was like, well, I want to keep farming. So did Annie. Nelson's a writer. So he's like, oh, I can like find writing anywhere. So we moved to Vermont, to the Northeast Kingdom. We worked at Pete's Greens. And then a horrific fire happened about 5 months into us working there, and the whole entire shed burned down, which was all of our root crops for the summer CSA or the winter CSAs. And so there was a moment of like, okay, what's next? Do I stay here and wait for everything to be rebuilt? I grew up going to Colorado all the time. I have always loved Colorado. And so Nelson was like, do you want to just move back to move to Colorado? And we did. We found a farm and a bed and breakfast because I thought that's something I wanted to do. And we did a season there. And then ended up in Denver probably like 3 years later, something like that.
Okay. So the farm thing was a big part of your life,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
just education.
Yeah. I think the same work ethic applies to kitchens and
Oh,
farms.
yeah.
So then it was like I'd been working in dungeons for the past like 6 years with like under fluorescent lights, and then to be able to do that kind of physical manual labor but in the sun, I needed it. It was so necessary. But then I got the itch to cook. Even when we were living in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, I was reading Pete Wells' New York Times reviews weekly, feeling like I was like missing this world of food, but also just being the best at it. And so once we worked at the bed and breakfast, I was like, I don't want to do that. And I'm so glad that I learned from somebody else that this is not my calling. We moved to Carbondale, and I started working back in kitchens and professional chefing in Aspen or private chefing. And then Denver was kind of an exciting place. Like, it wasn't far away. It seemed that it had a food scene that was up and coming. And so it just kind of felt like a natural progression to move to a city because I was feeling very small in this small town. And so that's kind of how Denver came about.
I have to just say, as a footnote, anyone listening, if you ever get a chance to go to a farm or farms, it's the best. There's nothing I like more.
Yeah.
They're eager to share. They love showing you around. They're so proud of what they're growing. It's really hard work that everyone should have more appreciation for. Like, really hard work. Like, the last book I did, I love telling this story, but it was with a small farm in Michigan. I spent a day there. I've become friends with the farmer. But if it rains the day before they come into Chicago, they go out. I mean, they're out picking in the rain to fulfill orders. Well, like if it rains 3 days before their driving day, they can do other stuff. But if it happens the day before, you're working in the rain that day. It's so much harder, I think, than people understand. And it's actually, unless you want to talk me out of it, especially now that my kids just graduated college. But I'm planning to go work on I want to go work on a farm for a summer.
Oh,
Um,
you got to do it. I mean, and it just makes you seeing somebody so passionate about what they do is so infectious. And I love like I sometimes people are like, oh, such and such farmer is kind of like he's kind of salty or has an attitude. I'm like, that's the best. Like these guys are out there doing this day in day out. They're by themselves sometimes. Like it's a whole different breed of human. And I am obsessed with that personality of people just doing what they love and they're really good at it and they dig in and there's not accolades for it. It's just them doing what they love. There's something so refreshing.
well, yeah. And honestly, if you're, I don't want to, this is such a facile thing to say, but if you're a city dweller and you're finding a farmer to be a little salty, you, you might have driven that response.
It's you,
Because
not them. Okay.
well, it might be. I mean, I listen. I'm very self-conscious when I go to these places because I'm a definite. I've been an urban dweller my entire life. I come in very respectfully
Yeah.
and sincerely and humbly, and I just want to learn. And I never run into. I mean, I've run into people who are few words. You
Yeah.
know that happens, but I've never been treated anything but wonderfully, and
Yeah.
ever anywhere on any
Yeah.
farm.
Well, it's funny, Tim Stark, who has Eckerton Hill, like he's neurotic to the bone, and I love it so much. Like his love and knowledge of tomatoes and peppers and the way he talks about it, it's, some people are like, oh, that's a lot. And I'm like, this is not enough. Like I want to be surrounded by more people like this.
Absolutely. So you go to work at, is it Acorn?
Yep, I was at Acorn. They unfortunately closed during the whole pandemic. It was just too much. But at the time, we were the number one restaurant in Denver, wood fired. That's where I learned how to cook with wood. I had never done it before, so I knew that was something that I wanted to learn. Um, and so I was there about a year and a half, and then I started thinking like I have my own ideas. I have my own, you kind of start you're like, oh, like I want to do this, I want to do that, but I want it to be mine. And I there for the longest time, I never thought I would have my own restaurant. I'm like, where do I find that money? Where, like, how does this even happen? But I think once the bug gets in there for you and you've done management, and you've done all these things, and it just felt like a natural progression to do my own thing. I think I became not like a bad employee, but I wanted to be my own employee.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, am I right? Did you come kind of just before the whole like, you know, pop up one night only? Like I feel like you were
Yeah,
right before that went
yeah, that was a
like
hundred
I
percent.
feel like you were right before everybody can do that, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, yeah.
that's accurate.
Yes. Not
So like
me. I think I would have done pop-ups if that had been like such
right.
a, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you take your stuff out for a test drive? How did you go about developing what was, you know, ended up being your opening menu at the restaurant?
Honestly, just dinner parties. I cooked so much for people in my home and um I mean, we were 3 days out from opening, 4 days out from opening, and nothing was turning out right. And I remember the marketplace was still under construction. We were the third place to open in here, and like standing under an unfinished staircase crying and being like, I don't know how to cook. I don't know what the fuck I think I'm doing. This is crazy. Like, I cannot believe I'm doing this. And we did it in a way that was like very shoestring. There was no PR. It was just like, we're just going to open our doors. And I'm still kind of shocked of how good the food was at day one. And I think it was just because my then sous chef Chelsea, we just were cooking food that we loved and not thinking, Instagram wasn't huge then. Like it was memories for us. It was food that we loved. It wasn't us chasing something online that everybody was doing or plating a certain way. It was ugly food. It was so ugly. But we literally were cooking from our hearts and people tasted it. I mean, it's kind of insane to me.
Wow. It's funny. I feel like you've mentioned a few times in this call this kind of, let's call it a crisis point and then a recovery moment. Is that kind of a cycle that works for you?
It does. Yeah, I'm a procrastinator. I'm like that person that's like, I can be a duck when I get really freaked out. Like, you know, being in an open kitchen and having some of the worst, hardest services of my life, you would never be able to see here. But I let it all kind of build up, and then it's just a release of like, and I have to get out every fear and speak every fear. And then it's like, okay, I guess I go back, and we do it again. But I think, the thing with Annette was I had the spotted pig, I had farms, I had all these things that led up to inform Annette, and it's been incredible. And now, as I'm getting a little bit older and we're almost a decade old, I'm like, I'm craving more experience, like I'm wondering, is there a second part of my restaurant life? Or, do I go study somewhere? Like you're saying, work on a farm. Do I go abroad for a few months? Like I'm now thinking about the restaurants in this way of like, this was a decade old thing and formed by really important things, but now my life has changed. So now what informs my food? So I'm
But
in
so
the middle of
you're
a crisis.
a bit older. But when you say that, you mean you don't mean something outside of the You mean you might go somewhere or do something that might bring another little bit a different texture to what you do, or a little bit
Yeah.
more. I mean, it's an overused word, but a little new inspiration, or a little bit. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, because I think, for the first 5 years, I worked every single night on the line. Like we didn't travel. We didn't, and now we have a 3.5-year-old, and that kind of takes up a lot of life. And but there is, everybody, like my cooks are always like, what's the one thing you regret not doing? And I'm like, cooking abroad, learning in a different atmosphere. That's something that pushed me. Like New York for me was Europe at the time. Like that was as far out of my comfort zone. But now I say like, why can't I do that? Like, yeah, that's a regret that I didn't do it when I was younger, but at the same time, I can still do it when I'm older. So I don't know. I feel like right now is like a really big exploration moment of what still inspires me and what people still want. And I know I mentioned to you, we're starting a zine. Like I'm just throwing everything out there, just
yeah.
having fun.
The zine is what?
So it's called Mother Sauce.
Great
And
name.
thank you. So my husband Nelson, and also my business partner, is first and foremost a writer. He got sucked into this in 2020 when the pandemic hit. But he's an incredible writer. And so we've just been I've been thinking about cookbooks. They feel really daunting to me. The thought of like taking on a 2-year project. I also am like, what if things that I do 2 years ago, I don't really want to be in a cookbook. Like I just feel like things are always evolving. So the idea behind this zine was kind of, we hope it morphs, but like a serialized cookbook that could eventually be compiled into one. And then Nelson and I have a lot of thoughts and funny things and things that have happened here, running a business as partners, having a kid. And then the hope is that we get to, collaborate with friends, and we have other contributors. And I think we get to work with really amazing people in this industry, and we want to give those people a place to put their thoughts and words and have something tangible. It just feels like it's rejuvenating.
That's great. I mean, I say it all the time on the show. I say it off the show. I love putting myself in situations where I'm trying to learn something new, or it doesn't always happen. I tried to learn guitar 7 years ago, and even my instructor was like, "I don't think this is your instrument." I
I mean,
couldn't.
yeah,
I got nowhere. I got
yeah.
nowhere. I just could not get past these rudimentary songs. I feel like because I've known how to touch type since I was 12, I feel like something keyboardy is more probably. So I'm going to at some point try that. But
I love that.
whatever it is, a new language or taking a class. I mean, I just think it's, or with this show, I've taught myself how to mix sound,
Yep.
and I
Yes,
love that.
I've never done a zine layout, and
Right.
we have somebody who's doing it with us, but I'm enamored with the process. It is such a creative thing to see come to light, and it's so fun to use somebody in a different field with your field and then see like this thing explode, and you're like, this is so cool. So it's a passion project, but I also think that it could go somewhere as well.
That's great. Well, I will definitely, in addition to your restaurant links, I will link to where people can find out more about the
Amazing.
Mother Sauce, and I'll encourage everybody to go do that. But I'll leave it there for now. I hope you'll come back again sometime, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Andrew. I love it.
And that is our show for today. Again, my great thanks to Caroline Glover for joining us. Go check out Caroline's restaurants. Annette, and Traveling Mercies Oysters and Cocktails. Again, those are both in Aurora, Colorado, which again is right over the town line from Denver. If you are in Denver or even Boulder, you're close enough to visit Caroline's restaurants. And go to our episode description for today's show and click through and check out the new zine, Mother Sauce, that Caroline and Nelson are putting out. I hope you will get yourself on that mailing list and check out their first issue. Please go check out Mees, the recipe operating system for professionals, at getmees.com/Andrew. Thank you as always to S.Pellegrino for their longstanding support of the pod. Andrew Talks to Chefs is the property and a production of Table 12 Productions Incorporated. This episode was written, booked, edited, mixed, and hosted by me, Andrew Friedman. If you would like to support us, we ask that you do that by telling a friend about the show, posting about the show on social media, and or rating and or reviewing us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, which helps new listeners discover the show. And if you are now watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Our thanks to After School Special for our music. Please check out their album, Double Barrel Single Entendre, on iTunes. Please follow us on Instagram and also on TikTok. The handle for the show there is @ChefPodcast. And I thank you for listening. We will see you back here soon with another episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs.